welcome. We've still got a couple minutes. Good to see some familiar faces. I'm gonna give just a couple minutes for people to trail in here. How are things in Vermont this evening?
It's a beautiful day.
Oh, good. It was really pretty here. It's warm there too, right?
Yes.
That's so weird.
Almost 70.
So
Yeah.
72 in Burlington at one point.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Hello.
And there's no snow on the mountains. I was up there today.
So it's just so weird.
Enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, right, exactly. I think this is at least here in Pennsylvania, this is the last day we're supposed to expect this.
Yeah.
Rain tomorrow and the temperatures are going to be dropping.
Yeah, it was fun while it lasted.
That's right. Thank you.
It was.
Welcome to those who have joined us. I'm just gonna let us get to actual 7 o'clock to give folks a chance.
Hey, hi, Kathleen.
Hello, Mary, so good to see you.
Good to see you. Looks like you're doing well.
Yeah. I mean, spending a lot of time at home. Things here in Erie with COVID are quite bad. So
Yeah.
really,
okay.
really laying low.
I think 1 or 2 people from St. Peter's were planning to come. So
Wonderful. Hi, Diane.
Hey, Kathleen.
Welcome.
Thank you. Oh, Melanie. So it's such a fun surprise to see who shows up in the room.
I know, isn't it?
Now, is this going to be like uploaded to the diocesan?
It will be, and in fact,
Okay.
an issue of The Mountain happens to be coming out tomorrow. It's every other week, so we'll include it in that.
Oh, good.
So I already have one question for you, Kathleen. Are you going to take a list of questions or?
Oh yeah, my style generally is ask as they come. So please go ahead and ask now.
Well, you have a very nice way of speaking to us in a way that it looks and feels like you're speaking to us as opposed to looking at the screen. What's the trick? Because I got to preach Sunday on Zoom, so.
No trick. I use a laptop and just look at you when I'm talking. Now I feel so. Yeah, that's my only trick.
The secret is out.
Whatever you do, it works. So
well, that's good. It may just be the built-in laptop camera. I don't know. I will say I had to preach my first pre-recorded sermon, which was not an experience I enjoyed.
no.
And that used a real camera, and not only did I not enjoy the experience, I was like, oh, it doesn't look like I'm looking at anybody. And part of that I really believe is because I wasn't. There was no one there.
Right.
It's an empty room, and it's like on Zoom, technically I'm in an empty room, but I'm actually seeing people. It makes
I was thinking, let's see, could I put Google Eyes up on top of my camera or?
I'm sure there are people doing that. I guarantee, or putting like little printouts of your congregation or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. All right, well, it is 7:01, so I am going to get started. I see we have people coming in, which is awesome. I'm so happy you're here with me this evening. For those who don't know me, my name is Kathleen, and until July, I was a proud member of the Episcopal Diocese of Vermont, and it will always, always, always have a huge piece of my heart. So I always jump at the chance to do anything with this wonderful group of folks. Welcome. I also have been played some role in getting started with the Green Mountain Online Abbey, which I credit Bishop Shannon to in terms of all of the vision. I often tell people when she said I'm going to do worship twice a day on Zoom, I said to her face, "Are you sure?" And she just had that pastoral instinct and vision, and knows a lot more about a lot of things than I do. But because of that experience, I learned a lot about how to do these things. I have learned as I have gone. I also managed for a while the tech side of online worship for my home parish in Arlington, Vermont. And now I am managing it for one of my 2 parishes here in Erie for St. Mark's Episcopal Church in Erie, Pennsylvania. And so I just want to start out by sort of giving an overview of sort of what we're going to do here, what I plan to cover, and then also exactly, as I just said, sort of my style, which is that if sort of in the middle of something that I'm going through, you have a question, please don't be shy. You can use the chat box. You can just be like, "Hey, Kathleen," out loud, and I will try to get to you. So when I talk about this, my bias is right out front. I'm really going to be almost exclusively talking about the Zoom meeting format for worship. For congregations of most sizes, except for extremely large congregations, I think it's really, I find it, in my experience, to be the format that works best in terms of providing some sense of actual gathering and being together as a congregation. Zoom, you can use Zoom webinar, you can certainly use Facebook Live, especially for things like daily office, and for Sundays if that's what you want to do. But this is going to be about specifically Zoom meeting. That is what the diocese uses. So if you've ever been to one of our diocesan services, it will be familiar, and it's what we're in right now. So I also recognize, so I'm just going to go through sort of a little bit of about setting up, a little bit about during worship, and then sort of some extras. And specifically for this sort of new liturgical role of the person who is not necessarily, hopefully not the worship leader or a worship leader, but whose primary role in the liturgy is to sort of run the tech on the service. So I know not every congregation is going to be able to have that person. And I also know that person doesn't have to be the same person every Sunday. You might have a team of people who sort of take turns. But again, this is being recorded, so perhaps, and also if you're like one person from your church and you want to help other people know how to do it, you can do that too. So remember, it doesn't have to be all on you, and probably nothing in church ever should, because we should all be able to take a day off. I also know that probably, I'm looking at some of you, and some of you I know have a lot of experience with this already. And I know that for I know that some of you don't have any experience with it. So that's why I really, I both really encourage the questions and the slowing me down if I need to be slowed down. And I also encourage those for whom this, some of this might be really old to you, just to hang tight. There might be something down the road that that will be new for you. So what I wanted to start off with, and for some of you, when you're asked or you volunteer to do this liturgical role of, you know, whatever you want to call it, Zoom worship tech, digital deacon, for some of you, this work may start at the at actually setting up the Zoom meeting. For some of you, it may not. For some of you, the clergy may do that, or other parish leadership may do that. But for those of you, I just wanted to cover a little bit about it in case you may be asked to be the person to set it up. So I'm going to do a screen share just to show how you might set up one of these meetings and some of the settings to look out for. So here we go. Okay, so I am in my Zoom account right now, and I am on, you'll see this tab called meetings on the left, and you'll see I have no, I'm going to try to get this so you can see it. I have no upcoming meetings scheduled. So we're going to imagine that I am scheduling a worship meeting, so to speak, worship liturgy for my parish. So schedule a meeting, and I'm going to say worship at St. Mark's. And then you will pick your time, as you probably know. So it's going to be on Sunday. We're going to imagine that it is at 10 a.m., 10 o'clock a.m. I am going to give it 2 hours just in case. As a note, if you go over the time that you say it is, it does not shut you down. I found that important to note. And what I would do, what I have done for my parish, the way that it works for the Green Mountain Online Abbey, is I might go ahead and schedule this as a recurring meeting. And I'll tell you what that means. But the way to do it is you click this recurring meeting button. And since it's church, it will be weekly. And you're going to want to repeat every 1 week on Sunday. And then I have it repeating because we friends do not know how long this is going to go on. So I have it repeat as far out as it will go, which in this case is Sunday, October 31st, 2021. Lord help us. So what this means when you set a meeting as recurring is that the same link and password will be what your people use every single Sunday. Now, the only caveat to this is if you have any kind of like security issue along the way where someone comes in who probably shouldn't be there, you may want to change the password or completely change the link. I have not had that happen to me. I know it does happen, but there is a really nice element to providing people with one link and one password that they can just really get into a pattern of using every single week. You can also choose your passcode. So like if your congregation has like a little, like the street you're on or something to do with the year that you were founded, something like that, that might mean something to people, that it would be a good choice. So of course, for the Diocese of Vermont, I chose Rock Point because that's just a thing that kind of means something to people that hopefully they would think about. So I'm just going to say Vermont for this case, and you literally can enter anything you want. There is an option for a waiting room, and some of you may be using that for added security. I have not found it necessary. Doesn't mean I won't use it at some point, but at this point, I use only the passcode. Now, there are many different ways to do this and to think about Zoom security. My congregation here in Erie, we only share the Zoom information in our newsletter. We do not share it on Facebook. We do not share it on our website, but we do share that there is Zoom worship. And if people are interested, to email us. And we have a very, very good at inviting people to church congregation. It's part of the culture there. And so what we've said to people is, listen, we still want you inviting people to church. What we want you to do is forward them the email. So we don't have it anywhere available sort of on the open web. So I'm pretty comfortable. So far, we've been okay, knock on wood. I'm pretty comfortable keeping our link and our password the same every week. I set the video for everybody in the meeting to on, both hosts and participants. All that means is that when you initially sign on to the meeting, it will give you the option. It still will ask, to have your video on, but it means that people will come in. They, again, can still choose not to have their video, but I really like to encourage people, if they're comfortable, to have their video on, because that's part of the whole benefit of a Zoom meeting. For audio, I choose both, which gives people the option, because sometimes it's a little hard. They can use either a telephone or their computer audio to connect. I do not usually allow participants to join at any time. One of the reasons for this is there's actually a safe church argument for this. If you click allow participants to join anytime, it means that people can come in before the host is there. And so that means technically, again, it's unlikely, but it just means that you could have two people in a Zoom space without a staff member there, without one of you there, and you wouldn't know what was going on and you wouldn't know what was happening. Again, unlikely, but I just figure why not have it so that the host has to be there first before other people can join. I always do mute participants upon entry, especially for worship. Do not require authentication to join. That would be pretty hard, I think, for most of our folks. Automatically record meeting. This really depends on how you want to use the worship service. So for example, for the Diocese of Vermont on Sundays, we do record, but we are very careful. You'll note we only ever release Bishop Shannon's sermon. And that's not because we don't think people are interested in the rest of the service. It's because that prayer space, that like open intercession space, is so sacred in that community, tends to be, at least when I was there, people were quite open and quite personal. And so we wanted to protect that. So you can choose to go ahead and record it. I always record it to the cloud. You have a certain amount of recording capacity, just that's included with your account. If you record it on the computer, you have to have a lot of space on your computer. I don't have enough space on my computer to record most meetings locally, so I would say in the cloud. And then, again, you can choose to record, you can choose not to record. Once you do record, you can choose what you want to do with that recording. So just because you record it doesn't mean you're going to release it. Okay, and then you click save. And you have your meeting. And so you can see now that you have your meeting, that you have this invite link. And this piece right here, it's a little confusing how they do it. So this invite link is just the link to send to people who are definitely going to be able to join with their computers. But if you click on copy invitation, you'll see that this actually has all the information that people need if they want to join, either on, using a computer or using their telephones. And that's for most of our congregations, all the ones I've been involved, we've got a couple people who will dial in. So it's important to have all of that information. And again, it's just a little tricky. You have to click on that copy invitation to get all of the information. Any questions at this point?
Kathleen?
Yes.
It's Melanie.
Hi, Melanie.
So if you don't have a waiting room, but you click on the allow, or you don't click on allow participants to join, what do they see if they click on the Zoom link ahead of the host? What do they see?
Something like host hasn't started. I mean, it's a pretty clear message. Something like host hasn't started meeting yet. Wait for host to start meeting. I mean, it's
different from the host will let you in soon.
It is. It's slightly different. It's slightly different.
Okay,
I think the language is the host has not started the meeting. So it's very clear that they're in a place, they're in the right place. It's just that it hasn't started. So, but again, the caveat there, I mean, on a Sunday, I actually do tend as host to log in about half an hour early. I'd not for a meeting like this, but for Sunday morning worship, just because people get nervous, they want to make sure they're in the right place. I will do that. That doesn't mean I'm on camera and audio the whole time. Some of you were here early enough that you saw what I actually do. I will throw up a screen shared just a slide, or it could be a Word doc that just says welcome to St. Mark's in my case. And I sometimes have a little music with it, just so people get that anxiety of wanting to know that they're gonna get to the right place. And so a lot of people will come in half an hour early, 20 minutes early, park themselves, and you'll see on the video, right? And then they'll go get their coffee, they'll come back and whatever. So I try to do that. It's not a requirement, but especially if, Melanie, it's a really good point, you're going to make it so that people can't come in before the host. If you are the host, you might want to think about how early you want to sort of start the meeting so that
Mine tends to be more like yours, at least 15 or 20 minutes early.
Yeah, so, but really good question.
Okay.
Yes,
Kathleen, this is Mary. I noticed when we started that when people came in later, there wasn't the dinging.
Yes, that's
How to get rid of the dinging?
so funny. That's next, literally.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe that was the waiting room thing.
Yeah, no, this is so after you've set up your meeting,
I have a question.
Yeah.
Kathleen. This is Glenn Sproul from All Saints, South Burlington.
Hi, Glenn.
Hi. I have a personal Zoom account, but I have not spent money to get the extended capacity for meeting length and so on. If I set up, and I've only set up 1 or 2 meetings over the past many months, so I don't remember what's in there. Will I have all these options in my account?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is like even the lowest level accounts will have should have almost all these features.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank
There
you.
is a cutoff, excuse me, on the time on a personal account. You're limited to 40 minutes.
If there are more than 2 participants, I think.
Yes. That's on the unpaid account. But again, that first level of paid, which is not very much, will get you anything you would need really for parish worship.
Kathleen, how did you put up, this is David Hamilton.
Yes.
How did you put up it was the diocesan shield and music as a holding place before we started?
We will get to that. We will get to
Okay, great.
Anybody else before I move on?
Why do you have your time zones set to Pacific?
Oh, probably a holdover from the fact that I lived in California a couple of years ago.
Kathleen,
Well, that's
this is Virginia from St. Paul's.
Yes.
When somebody asked about how to mute the noise, wouldn't you go to meeting options and mute on entry? Is that how you can stop the dinging when somebody comes in?
Nope,
No?
that's different. Mute on entry is about like actual your voice being muted. The doorbell is a different setting, which is
Okay, good. I'm glad we clarified that. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else in this section before I move to the next? Okay. So in your Zoom, so there's like again, it is like the least user-friendly situation. I actually this week, because we had another diocesan convention we manage, and I had a question, and I actually got to a human being at Zoom, and it was really enlightening because this guy was so frazzled because as much money as they're making, like they just cannot develop and make things work fast enough. And so he was really lovely and apologetic, and it really gave me an insight into what their lives have been like. So a lot of the ways that this sort of back end of Zoom are set up are really not intuitive. And the reason for that, I will give them this excuse, is that like all of a sudden the entire world needed to use this tool at the same time. So, and that's also to tell you that none of this stuff is intuitive. So if like you don't know where to find things, you are so not alone. So if you go into your account, you'll see on this left side, you have all of these different categories. So like to set up a meeting, you click on meetings, which is what we just did. If you go to an area called settings, you'll see that you get all of these options for settings that are actually like overall settings for any meeting that you set. And so I'm going to scroll to the ones that, to the options that I think are relevant here. So. So one of them is co-host, allow the host to add co-hosts. And that may be useful for you if you have a larger congregation, or if you just have more than one person willing to volunteer to be sort of a back end helper type. The thing that a co-host can do is mute people, which is one of the things that that this role might be doing, like, and because often people they'll like, if they're on their phones, they'll pick up their phone and by mistake go off mute, and you'll hear their dog barking and they didn't mean to be off mute, and you can mute them. So if you have someone else to help you with that, having a co-host allows you to do that. And
Also, if your internet goes down, your co-host can take over.
also true. Yeah, very important in Vermont. For screen sharing, and this one I had to learn in the beginning of our experience in Vermont. Some of you early members of the Green Mountain may remember this. You will want to make sure you have host only selected for screen sharing. In the early days of the Green Mountain Abbey, we would have people by mistake share their screens in the middle of worship. And if that were to happen as host, you can stop that, but better to not have it happen. So that's a good one to make sure that you have clicked.
If it's host only, can a co-host share screens as well?
Yeah, they can. Yeah.
Okay, good.
For allow removed participants to rejoin, and we'll go over this, you want to have that off. That's how they have it automatically. But if you've had to boot someone out of a worship meeting, it really means that you probably do not want them to return.
Kathleen, how would you boot them out in the first place?
We'll go over that.
Okay.
That's a long list.
It's a really long list. I know. The next thing I had was the sound. It's somewhere.
It was, I think,
Oh, did I pass it by?
I thought it was
I
back at
think
the
so.
top.
I think
Yeah.
it was up.
Oh, here it is. Yes, sound notification when someone joins or leaves.
Oh, where is
I have that turned
Where is
off.
that? Okay.
You'll want that off for worship. For a meeting, you might want it on, but for worship, it can get really annoying.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
What is the default?
I don't know. Who knows when I turned this off? I think the default might be to have it on. So again, but if you go into these settings in your account and turn it off, then for every meeting you set, it'll automatically default to whatever you choose. So
Good.
So any questions now before I move on?
Just, Kathleen, just a quick question about the cloud. Which cloud service do you need to have in order for that to work?
Zoom. That's a really good question. So with your account, you actually get a little bit of cloud recording, and it's well enough for a Sunday
great
service. So I will show you again, if you go on the left part of this, that left bar, that's where you find everything, and you go to recordings. I don't think I have a recording in here. I don't. Let's see. It's thinking hard about it. I don't think, oh no, I do. I have one recording, Indie Meeting. So that's great. So you'll see, like, if you had more than one, there'll be a list, and it's very, very cool. So you can either download it and it's 3 files. It downloads the chat as a text file, the video as a video file with the audio, and an audio file if you wanted just the MP3 for some reason. So you can do that and do whatever you would like with that. Or you can click, here's Shermie. A lot of you know Shermie the cat.
Oh, Shermie.
You can click on share, and then you can actually share with your congregation. Again, with this copy sharing information, you can share with them a link and a passcode to see it directly on Zoom. Now, the caveat there is that, like, because you have a limited amount of storage, you would probably want to tell folks you have until this Sunday to watch the recording, because then it's going to be deleted to make way. But like the cool thing about that is it means you never have to download the video. You never have to upload it anywhere. You can just provide people this link so that they can see it that way. And you can see, so here, what I would share with parishioners is these two things right here, the meeting recording and the access passcode.
And
So, nice little option.
How did you access that panel?
So you go to, so once you're on, so this is what you get when you see, when you hit
Recordings.
and
Recordings and
recording, and next to every single recording, you'll see the share button.
yeah.
And if you click share, you will see there's a thing called sharing information. And for some reason, they make you click a button that says show.
Okay.
As
All
opposed
right.
to
Got it. Thank you.
yeah, of course. So that, again, for congregations, like in terms of not creating a lot of extra work for people, that's a really nice option. And again, yeah, it's a part of your account, so I encourage you to use it. Anyone else? All right.
Just about that, Kathleen, what we've just been talking about, you would notify folks in the congregation by sending them an email with that link in it?
That's what I would do. I would just say, I mean, again, if you have a weekly newsletter or whatever, I mean,
Right.
included in that. But yeah, I would say, you know, if you missed Sunday's worship service and you'd like to watch it, click this link, enter this passcode, and you have until, you can say whatever you would like to,
Right.
Sunday at 9 a.m. to watch it. And then we'll be taking it down to make way for this coming Sunday's worship.
Right.
The other nice thing about that is if you want to be able to share your worship with people who couldn't make it at that time or had technical issues or their Wi-Fi was down, I think it's a really good thing to be able to offer people. And that's not like publicly putting it on YouTube, right? Like it's kind of that nice balance where it's like, okay,
Right.
this kind of stays in our community. We're not saying this, like putting it on a billboard out there. But we are giving people who weren't able to like get it all, make it all happen at the time, to take part in some way.
Nice.
So I have another question about settings.
Yes.
While we're in there.
Yes.
Further down, there's a setting called Always Show Meeting Control Toolbar.
Yes.
Is that, if I turn that on, is that just for the hosts and co-hosts, or is that for
Yes.
everybody?
It's just for the hosts and co-hosts as a total personal preference thing.
That's going to be handy because David, you've had problems with your toolbar disappearing.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Because if you don't mouse to it frequently, it disappears.
It does, yeah.
So I'm going to turn that on.
Nice. Anybody else?
I'm trying to find what John is talking about. I'm sorry.
Let's see here. Always show meeting control toolbar.
Ah.
Yeah. So it's just a setting. You can see
So I've turned it on. Now, if we've already created a recurring meeting, will this be true of meetings that have already been created?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer. Sorry.
Well, I'm not going to create the meeting all over again.
Yeah, well, you can, so experiment. Let me know.
We'll see.
Know the answer. I have a
We'll see.
I think you can edit meetings.
Right, but this is actually an overall setting that isn't available
Okay.
for a meeting basis. But I have a feeling it would take, like, I have a feeling it'll work. I have a feeling. Take that for what it is. Anyone else?
Further down, there's a setting called remote control.
Yeah, I have no idea what that is.
Well, it says during screen sharing, the person who is sharing can allow others to control the shared content.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn that off.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn that off.
Yeah, that seems like the thing to do. How fascinating. Remote control.
I'm looking at this for the first time. You know, we've done I don't know, 50 of these already. And
Yeah. I mean, I assume that would be the kind of thing, I mean, we can try it. Well, it's funny, I'm screen sharing now. I assume it's the kind of thing where where you'd have to go an extra step to allow someone to interact with it while you're screen sharing.
correct,
I don't know. I have not
correct,
tried it.
correct. You do. You
That's
do.
cool. All right. Anyone else?
Kathleen, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Just wanted to know on the storage, do you have to physically remove it? Or does it automatically
It
just?
will automatically. I mean, because I'm a weird, and also you'll get an email. If you're the person who gets the emails from Zoom, it'll also warn you when you're getting close to capacity. And there's also, it's like after a certain amount of time that I'm not remembering, it will automatically delete it. But what I tend to do, just because I like to keep track of these things, is again, probably every week or whatever. I mean, it depends on how often you use it, go in and delete things myself just to make sure that I'm sort of keeping track of what we.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So, okay, so we've kind of been through, I already kind of talked about the whole sort of how to invite people. And that's like a weird, again, like you really have to figure that out for your congregation. That balance of like wanting to be welcoming and security and all of those things. But just know the more that you advertise publicly the link and or the password, the more security you probably want to add. So that's like sort of the balancing act there. So in terms of the other sort of preparation before these, and this would not necessarily be your job as the sort of tech person, but I find it incredibly helpful to have a script that is in addition to what we would think of as the bulletin. So, and I'm really calling it a script. I know that's probably like some kind of sacrilege for liturgy, but I will show you what, and I can drop it, like this is what this past Sunday for St. Mark's. And I use actual names. I don't know if we'll always have to do that, but I did it in Arlington too. And when I started adding names to the scripts is when we really got into our groove. I suppose it kind of makes sense. And we provide the script version of the liturgy to all the liturgy participants in advance so that they can look at it, and a lot of them print it out and have it ready that way. So it's really simple. It is kind of bizarre because again, it's like a script formatted version of liturgy, but I find it really helps. The other thing that for my liturgies that I have found works quite well for Zoom meeting liturgy is to have what I love to call the liturgical role of the voice of the people, because we can't have everyone off mute saying thanks be to God, for example. It just does not work.
Right, right.
We assign one person. Again, I love calling it voice of the people. It's so powerful. So this week it was a woman named Sarah. And so again, made sure to have her there with all of her parts built in. So again, that's not necessarily a technical side, but some of you may be the people responsible for, at the very least, making sure that everyone has the script, understands what they're doing. Now, in the early days, we would have a rehearsal, maybe on this, like we do it on Saturday morning, where we just go through really quickly how this was going to work, look, and feel. We don't do that anymore. We don't have to. But again, depending on where you are as a parish in your journey, you may want to do that. You could also do it before worship on Sunday. But again, we found it really helped people with any kind of anxiety question.
Okay.
Does someone have a question?
So your voice of the people.
Yes.
Okay, we call that person the responder.
Yep, designated
and
responder.
it happens to be David's wife.
Wonderful.
Well, there's a reason for that, because we tried having somebody else as being a responder. And what would happen is if they didn't mute themselves all the rest of the service, every
Mhm.
time they said something like going along in a prayer, they would take over the audio in the meeting.
Right. They have to say, oh, so this is part of the explanation when you rehearse with people, that if you are like, yes, Sarah needed to not say anything the whole time except for her parts. And most of the time she was off mute. So it's a very specific role with very specific instructions.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is Diane. I know at St. Paul's, we do some things, it's Scott's wife, and that works really well.
Yeah.
Some things it's a designated responder, and it's fine. There's just that little delay.
Practice enough, there won't be.
Yeah, we're probably not
There
good
are
at
also Wi-Fi problems. I also understand that. I do have a new world of a little bit people with a little faster broadband. I do admit to this.
Is that what happens with that then, Kathleen? Because I've noticed in participating that if you have someone who's speaking and there's a responder, sometimes the responder starts before
Yes.
the leader or officiant is done.
Yes. Like, did
And
you
so
ever
is that
notice?
because of just the internet?
Yes. Like, did you ever notice Zoom does this really funny thing that sometimes, and you especially will hear it in preaching because people are talking for such an extended time, that if someone is speaking and their internet goes a little wonky, you'll hear it go a little wonky, and then all of a sudden the person will be really fast. That's because Zoom actually makes up for that and speeds the person up for that moment that the internet went. And so yes, Melanie, like the timing can definitely get off based on what's going on in people's individual houses with their connection.
Wow.
So I will take a breath and say that it is true, Vermont, my beloved Vermont, that you have challenges with timing that not all of us do.
Could I ask an ABC question?
That's what I'm here for.
I'm embarrassed to even raise it, but I really do not know how to use the chat.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. I was just adding the script to the chat. So, so to use the chat, you're using a desktop, you're using a computer. Yes, David.
Yes. Yeah.
So, so you've clicked on the bottom of the screen, you'll see the chat button.
Right.
Have you clicked on it?
Yep.
And then do you see a little box that says chat?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So, and you see my thing that says script with a little.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So help me with, so you're doing good.
Well, at the bottom, it's to everyone.
Yes.
How does one send a chat as I have seen when I've been on other Zooms? Sometimes somebody is specifically named.
So that's a really good question because it's actually a setting and not every meeting has it set that way. So we didn't put that in the settings, but for some meetings I think I have this meeting set. I can't quite remember that we can privately message people. It's totally up to you whether you want to turn that function on or not.
So that's one of the settings?
It's one of the settings. Yeah. So which is why in some meetings you see it and some you don't.
It's in settings and just says something about chat and private, or
it says chat and it's something like allow private messaging.
Oh, okay.
So David, in our chat, next to the word everyone, there's a little down arrow. If you hit that down arrow, it lists everybody that's in the Zoom meeting. And you get to pick somebody.
All I have is Kathleen.
But that's because I have it turned off.
That's your setting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I turned it off for some of our diocesan things too, because this is terrible. This is terrible. But sometimes people, church people can gossip.
Nah.
I've never heard such a thing. My goodness.
I know. And so they're like incidents where people think that they've hit the button to private message. Right? You just like want to avoid the option altogether. Just like that. So take that as you will. I like to avoid options and just say, you know what, anything you put in this chat is public. Just assume it's public.
It certainly was a stupid sermon.
Like, let's just not. So no, that was a really good question. That was
can I ask something?
Yeah, I have a question followed.
Okay, Virginia, go first.
Okay, so this is kind of simple, but when I do this with Scott, I'm helping Scott. Do I go in, I go into the Zoom program for St. Paul's, correct? And do this. How do I see all this background stuff? He makes me the co-host. Is that it?
Oh, so that's a fantastic question.
How does that happen?
You're wanting to do the stuff of helping with sort of the meeting settings and setting
up.
So
that's what we're doing. Diane Wright. That's because Diane Root, you've done this with Scott. So how do I get in there and see all that stuff?
So what we were just looking at with the settings and everything is actually the Zoom, it's on your web browser. You actually go to Zoom. So yes, you would use the same login on your web browser to log into Zoom that you have St. Paul's account.
To St. Paul's, yeah.
Yeah.
And then how do I see the behind the scenes stuff? Like, Diane, haven't you had to like mute people or do things with Scott?
Yeah, you don't, but that's not the settings stuff.
How do how do you do that stuff?
It has to do, I'm sure Kathleen will get to this. It has to do with seeing when you're co-host and you see the participants, I think you have extra controls.
You do.
Okay. So that was so I just want to make sure I was going to hear that. That's all.
It's not those settings that are for all meetings.
Okay.
It's what you can do on the spot. Yeah.
We will get to that, I promise.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. Sorry.
So, no, not at all. So we have our script and rehearsal. The next thing, again, we're still in preparation mode. I do apologize. The next thing is that if you're going to be, some people's liturgies have screen sharing and some don't. For all the liturgies I've been a part of, music has been pre-recorded and screen shared. And so my only couple of tips for that are like, it's especially in parts of Vermont, it's going to be really hard to screen share like from YouTube. That it's just really hard. So I would recommend having something that you actually have downloaded to your computer or to a hard drive connected to your computer as like its own file. That will make all the difference in the world in the quality. It just will make sure that people can it'll actually be available even if the internet is a little iffy. So that is my first recommendation for that. And yeah, I tend to think that the person who is this position probably ought to be the person to be doing the screen sharing. But another thing that's happening across the church is that a lot of our church musicians, if you have a church musician, are taking on that role. So that you make that be the custom as well. So the preparation part of that is whoever is going to do those screen shares, if you have them ahead of time, we'll want to make sure that you have them saved locally on your computer or on a drive rather than on the internet or in the cloud.
So Kathleen, that would mean not to save it like to OneDrive, which is a cloud.
Yeah, no, I would not recommend.
Be on a whatever device you're probably using for the service. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I would really recommend. I've seen a lot of people. I've just, again, I'm in all these Facebook groups and whatever, and I've just seen so many disasters caused by trying to share videos from online that are saved online.
And Scott usually does his own screen sharing.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
Well, he's an artist with it, so yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So now we will really get to starting out. So when I start, as I just said, what I tend to do is a screen share. So I have something like this. I'm going to open it now and show you. So I click share screen, and then I have just like I make it on PowerPoint. You can make it on Microsoft Word, anything that you're comfortable with. And you will see how simplistic this is. It is not fancy. That's
Oh,
it.
nice.
But
Oh,
you know, it can be anything. You can have whatever you want. But literally, I mean, I made this on PowerPoint. Again, it would have been just as fine on Microsoft Word. But anything that makes, to me, the idea is like people are like, okay, I'm at St. Mark's. I'm in the right place. If you want to be a little more fancy, you can do screen share, and there's an option to click share computer sound.
Yeah.
So you go ahead and preview as you had planned to do. Whoops. And then you, if you want to, in a couple minutes, can play a little bit of music. Come on. So especially early home setting, way to come in. For our folks, it's also nice because what can be really hard is the whole thing of like people coming in on mute and feeling like and again, different congregations have different cultures. Some congregations it may be like totally okay to have like chaos and talking, and I love that beforehand. For ours, we save that chaos for after the service. So we really do try to cultivate that, like, let's have this like kind of meditative one way of being to another kind of moment. And so we find that slide and that music can help out. And the great thing is that if people are having trouble or are unsure of something, they can still take themselves off mute and be like, Kathleen, I can't hear you, or I need, like they can still talk to you. It's just, there's something about church people and that music and whatever that makes something in our brain say, okay, this is church time. Maybe.
Kathleen, you had that music recorded, and you had a link that you went to when you did screen share.
I had it. It's an MP3 on my desktop.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, and it could be. I mean, you could share a video in that time if you wanted. Yeah, Diane.
No, I was just gonna say, so are those things you have to do separately, the visual screen share and then the sound share? Or they?
So how did you get there?
Say that again, Melanie.
How did you get there? You showed it to us, but how did you?
So you click.
So you could.
Yep. So you click on, what you'll do is click on screen share, which is at the bottom, will be at the bottom of your screen when you're host. This is a little hard because,
right.
Yeah. Actually, I wonder if I can, this is going to be so meta. I wonder, I bet I can do it. No, it's not going to let me. I thought I was going to be able to like screen share what I was actually doing in Zoom, but even Zoom can't handle that. So you click, there's a button that will appear on the bottom of your screen that says share screen.
Right.
And where does that take you?
That takes you to a page that allows you to share any open application. So I already had a photo opened. But it would work with Microsoft Word if you had it open. It would work with PowerPoint. It would work with your internet browser. Anything that you have open on your computer becomes an option. So I clicked on share screen, and then I clicked on, it's a Mac application called Preview, which allows, right? So I clicked on Preview, which had my Welcome to St. Mark's thing already open. And I also clicked this box. There are two boxes that it gives you. One is called Share Computer Sound, and the other is called Optimize Screen Share for Video Clip. You're going to want to click both of those, especially obviously the second one if you're sharing video clips. What Share Computer Sound means is that any sound on your computer is going to be shared. And the cool thing about that means that if I were to, so if as I'm going, oh gosh, I just realized Compline is happening in 10 minutes. So basically if I share it, and if I share my screen and I click on share computer sound, I can mute myself so that you don't hear my cats and my voice, but you hear the pretty music. So that's
Cool.
yes. Now
That's what I do,
I'm
David.
not at all going to get to everything. I'm going to have to do a second part because of conflict. I did not think about this. I'm so sorry. I should have actually probably requested this not be on Vermont's account because you all are so good and prayerful. I really will do a second part of this if y'all would want it. I can also do a recording of some of these things so you can actually see what they look like. So that I'm not going to be able to get through all of this, but the next things that the most important things for during the meeting really is that mute capability. So once you're a host or a co-host, you will notice that just as now you can mute and unmute yourself anytime, you will suddenly have the power to mute anyone else. You do not have the power ever to unmute someone else. Used to, but then Zoom realized it was a big privacy issue. So you have to learn. No one in the church is better at this than Bishop Shannon. If someone begins speaking their role, you're following along with the script and they have not unmuted yourselves, learn to liturgically say, Melanie, I invite you to begin again with mute off. And it's just fine. And it feels liturgical and calm and no one will even remember it happened. In terms of there's one other kind of neat thing that I only learned like midway through the diocesan services, which is there is a thing called Spotlight. And if you are a host, you can hover over anyone's picture and click on them, and you click Spotlight for everyone. I do this every time someone is preaching. It means that even if someone comes off mute and you aren't able to get to them quick enough and they say something, the person who's preaching will remain the one who's featured. So you won't lose them as sort of the featured person. That was like a major finding. I did that for Bishop Shannon every single week once I figured it out. So things got a lot smoother.
Where is that?
So when you're a host, you'll see that you hover over anybody's little Brady Bunch square. And if you click on them, you'll see a menu. And one of the menu options is Spotlight. It's called Spotlight for everyone.
Cool.
Yep. And then you do have to remember to take it off after they're done preaching. Otherwise, through the whole service, that'll be the person featured. It's not a horrible thing to happen, but it's nice to be able to see other people. All right, I feel terrible because I did kind of run out of time. So I do want to schedule a second session of this, but in our last 6 minutes, does anyone have any questions?
Yes, I do. Can we just go back to where you set up the meeting? How do you go the invite if you want to email that out? The information of the meeting. How do you get it out there? Did we do that?
It's a copy. You copy and paste. So again,
you copy. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
That's the best.
There's a link at the bottom of the little pop-up that says copy invitation information, and you click that and it's done. It's copied.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay. So okay.
Easy things.
Thank you.
Quick question, more like a poll. For those who are here, do you record your Sunday worship? Or
Not
is
yet.
it recorded?
We haven't yet.
No, not yet.
We do.
And you leave it up or share it or ask people if they want to see it to get in touch?
I don't think we've done anything with it. But now I know what our options are.
Okay.
Our church has a Vimeo channel and they upload the 10:15 service and also the sermon separately.
Nice. Rosie, which parish are you with?
Michael's in Brattleboro.
That's going to be my guess. That sounded very sophisticated. All right. I really do apologize. I will schedule, so I will post this video in the mountain tomorrow with a stay tuned for the next session.
Very
Thank you.
worthwhile.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
Hi,
have-
Lori.
Hi, Madeline.
This will be too long. We have a small group tonight. What happened last time is we really spent almost the entire time sort of talking about how to set up a Zoom meeting sort of with all of the features that make the most sense for you. And that video was made available sort of as you could click and watch it through Zoom in the last video.
I just watched some of it before I came tonight.
So what will happen after this is that I will take that video and the video of this session and make it one YouTube video so that if you aren't able to come to one of these or to either of them can take a look at them. So what I'd really like to do today is sort of start again, sort of right at the you've got all your settings set and you're beginning your meeting. And because it's such a small group, for real, do interrupt me if you have questions as we go along. So what we discussed is, and I think, everyone in this group has a good amount of experience, so forgive me for being a little elementary, but again, we also have our audience of future YouTube watchers. But that as the host, or a co-host, if you name a co-host, that you have the ability to mute people. You do not have the ability to unmute people. You used to, but they decided correctly that was a privacy violation. And so as we discussed, for worship, I usually set my meetings to automatically mute everyone as they come in. I also usually have a slide, just like the one you saw coming in, that kind of sets the tone. And I find Episcopalians, if there's music being played, it feels like a worship space. That's at least been my experience, that somehow that helps people know, like, okay, this is not coffee hour. We may have a digital coffee hour later, but this is a little different. It's usually not as beautiful and quiet as it was, again, in my experience, as it was for us coming in this evening. The way we do it at my parish is I watch actually for the folks who I know are playing a role in liturgy as they come in, and I actually interrupt the music. I mean, I speak over the music every time I see one of them to have them test their mic. So again, it's not entirely silent, but it's also not total chaos. So again, there are about 1 million ways to do this. That's how I do it.
Kathleen?
And, yes.
We might have talked about this last time. Is it possible to have more than one co-host?
Yes.
It is. Yes, it is.
I've been making both David and Y be co-hosts.
Good.
And Y helps me manage the waiting room.
Good. Yep.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess that's sort of in that in between. So also, as we're setting up, the waiting room is is a good thing to bring up. Some folks use waiting room, some folks use just password, but whatever you use, I mean, one of the things that I have consistently run into, it happened this last Sunday, is there was someone whose name was something like user one, and we didn't know who they were, and we messaged them to try to see who they were, and they didn't message us back, and we took the risk and let them in because we don't publish our Zoom information anywhere on the web. We just send it in our email. Doesn't mean that it couldn't be infiltrated somehow, but we wanted to take the risk just like you would in physical church, like whatever. And so I watched them carefully, because as the meeting goes, as you know, you can remove any user. If you click on any user under participants and more, you can remove them at any time. You can put them in the waiting room at any time. And so I had my finger ready to go, but you know, it was like the sermon was preached. We got midway through the liturgy and nothing had happened. And so, and that person just went right through and signed off when it was over. And so what we're assuming is that was probably one of our less tech savvy parishioners who was just there and didn't know how to answer us and didn't know how to change their name or participate, right? And so, so that's one of the hardest things for me, that remains one of the hardest things about online worship, is that balance between wanting to do what you can to manage the risk of someone coming in and Zoom bombing, but also offering the kind of welcome that we would want to as church. It's a really hard balance, and sometimes it means making decisions on the fly. The other thing to know is that I do know churches who have been, and I'm sure some of you do too, who have been Zoom bombed, and they lived right through it. And and so, I mean, that's just my word to you again, just like in regular church. I mean, for goodness sake, certainly a lot of churches in certain parts of the country, certain neighborhoods have had things happen in real time in the middle of services, and the community is able to sort of convene and talk about it and move on. So again, it's not something we want to happen, but it is a risk, and really it's about your community and your comfort level and sort of what levels you want to.
We've gone through the same thing.
Yeah.
Anyone with an iPad
Yep.
that hasn't set their name, they
Right.
just come in as iPad. So I kind of know who they are. Every once in a while, somebody will call in, and all I have is a phone number.
Right.
And I don't know who it is.
Yeah.
You just keep an eye on it.
Yep. And at least with the phone number, they can't show you something inappropriate.
Right.
So there is
Right.
that.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, so that's just, but I will say again, I mean, I've found that my best practice, and one cool side effect of this is the best practice of advertising it, or, you know, sharing the link only in the parish email. And also sharing, of course, the dial-in information over the phone to our people who need that, is that it actually encourages the culture of inviting people to church, because the only way we're going to get visitors is for our members to forward an email to their friend to join, if that's what they want to do. So there's just, again, that's sort of how we've tried to frame that. Like, listen, if you want your friends to come, like, we want you to do that. We still want you to be inviting people to church, and just forward that email and say, hey, here's the Zoom information. Please don't put it on the internet, but please feel free to use it and come. So yes, and so it sounds like you all are familiar for sure with the both the put in waiting room with the remove function, and then with the mute function. I learned from the best. I learned from Bishop Shannon. I have it scripted in our script for worship. It's always me. It's my role to have the announcement. So it's like I stop the music slide, I welcome everybody, and then go through the, like, I know it's really weird, but we ask that you all keep yourselves on mute until such a time as you are invited to, you know, offer your prayers, that kind of thing, as well as any other instructions that are specific to whatever your worship is. And then again, everyone does this different. We enter into a moment of silence, and then we actually start with a hymn, because again, which brings everybody sort of back into like, okay, worship mode. As to the mechanics of it, again, there are about a million ways to do this. The way, and I really, as with any liturgy, would not underestimate the value of like bringing all your members along, in terms of thinking of this, especially while we're online, as a learning process, a changing process, and a growing process. So I like to be really intentional with folks about like, this is what we've started with, but like, if something's not working or you have an idea, let us know. So when I started here in Erie, I was doing liturgy, I was doing Zoom worship the way I did it in Vermont, at my parish in Vermont. And in Vermont, we use a link to a bulletin, so that people can follow along. But here in Erie, after that first week, I got a lot of the same feedback, which was that they would really prefer to have the words on a slide being projected as the person says it. That they are more interested in that, which is just fine. And I loved that. Like, I loved that they trusted me to tell me that. I loved that I then was like, does this work? And everyone was like, yes, this works better. We like this better. You can't predict, again, the fact that the people in Arlington, Vermont did not want that. Pennsylvania do that. Someone could probably write some kind of sociology piece about why. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to listen to them. And
Kathleen, do you project that on share screen?
I do, and I will show you right now actually a little bit what that looks like. So so this is actually last week's slideshow. So you can see this is the welcome screen. I changed it to the Vermont logo for you all, with the music. And then I take it down and have the welcome. And then here's, I have our embedded video. This was our opening hymn. And then it looks like this. And so, those of us who are worship participants I have my script printed out. But you can see this way the people actually know, even though they're on mute, that bold, just like in a bulletin, is their time. And so what it does require is me to be paying really close attention, because if it's not me saying the words, I need to make sure that I change the slides as they go. I do not replicate the entire readings. I just say what the readings are, and then while the reader reads, I do have the responses. We do, and again, I wonder if some of the reason that my local context here was more interested in having this stuff up on the screen was because we have a lot more new Episcopalians than I had certainly. Most of my congregation in Arlington,
they don't know the service by heart.
Right. That's the thing. Most of my congregation in Arlington, I don't even think they clicked on the bulletin because they didn't even need to, right? Yeah. So, but these folks are new, and in love with it, newly with the liturgy, and so I think that might be part of why. And so again, just to give you an idea, I'm going very quickly, obviously, but yeah. And I do take it down. Even though I have a slide to tell me that it's sermon time, I take it down for the sermon, so that the preacher can be, the featured thing. Mm-hmm. Again, we actually have the whole creed written out.
So is this a PowerPoint that you put together, Kathleen?
It is, yeah, and it's great because once you do it once, it's not too much to change every single week.
I wonder if your folks in that part of the world are used to screen worship, in their churches.
Actually, most of ours are coming from the Roman Catholic tradition. So a couple are from the screen tradition, I think. But yeah, but it could be. And again, another hymn. Just trying to get to the end. We have a space for announcements. So again, just like the sermon, when we do announcements, then I stop the share so that the person we have one person do announcements, is featured. We have a closing song. We have the deacon dismiss us. And again, this is not saying that this is going to work for everywhere. I'm just letting you know what we do. And then I have a postlude, which is just like the first slide, the welcoming slide. So it has a music piece. And the way that we have, again, the thing that we have cultivated is that it's usually a short postlude. And so it gives people time, usually about 2.5 minutes, to go do what they need to do, go to the bathroom, get some coffee. And the idea is that by the time when the postlude stops, then coffee hour has begun. And then we have our digital coffee hour.
So Kathleen, when you're doing hymns and using this PowerPoint, I'm assuming the hymns you're doing are not showing choir members.
We're not we're not that sophisticated, although it's interesting. My other parish, the cathedral in Erie, is starting their own Zoom worship for the first time on Advent 1. And they have, of course, like a cathedral choir program. So they actually will be doing some of that cool digital choir stuff. But for St. Mark's, which is a much, more family parish kind of place, we have choristers, and the choir leader will record something. It's high quality. They have the recording, like they have good recording equipment, but they don't film themselves doing it in their house. They actually have the lyrics, which again, for this crowd seems to be something they like, even though they're on mute. You can actually see them singing along. So that's, again, and music, I mean, that's just such a good, so here I am in the same city, and it's like the difference between the music traditions in the two parishes are so different. At the cathedral, one of the reasons it's taking them this long to want to do Zoom worship is because they're so committed to like that really cathedral quality, very high church, very precise choir, chorister tradition. And so they think they think they're comfortable now, to your point, to like have.
So they haven't been doing Zoom church since March?
They haven't, although they've actually, we've got a weird scenario here. They've been responsible, along with the cathedral in Buffalo, New York, for diocesan worship. So they have been doing their part, but that worship has been live. Okay. So it wasn't as, so they're ready now they have been relieved of that duty. The bishop will take it on.
There you go.
It was a good short-term COVID solution, because our diocese are share a bishop. So he was like, all right, this, Buffalo will do 1 week, if we will do another. So,
okay.
So that has been what they've been up to. But yeah, exactly. They're like, our community needs to have its own worship at this point. And again, they have wondered, and we'll see if the music, as it's experienced on Zoom, is going to be meaningful for their people.
Mm-hmm.
We will see.
Well, this is interesting, Glenn. We've been I mix Glenn and an accompanist to do music, and I'm not skilled as a video editor, so I just put together a slideshow. But we could have the words to the hymn appear as you sing them on the screen as slides. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And again, it works for us. Now, I kind of imagine trying that in Arlington, and I'm not sure anyone would have sung along, but we'll see. Also, Kristen, it's so good to see you. Speaking of Southern Vermont.
It's nice to see you too. I'm sorry I was a few minutes late, but I watched the video from the last one.
Oh, good.
So I have like the backstory on that, and we've been doing Zoom worship since Easter.
Yep.
And I actually came on temporary part-time July to do Zoom, all things technology for Zion. So we're experimenting as we go, much like you said. I picked up some good tips. We're probably a little bit more lax on the security piece. Yep. However, I did talk to Father Ian Montgomery, is our supply clergy right now. And we talked about, I hadn't thought about the concept of limiting the video out to not include petitions. So that was a great call out. And the other one I didn't know about was Spotlight. Although I experimented with that this past weekend, and it was a little bit of a challenge, because as people switch to be the reader, you have to undo them and redo it. So I learned a lot. And what we've been doing is we do an order of service attached, and it has all the words to the hymns and all the readings and everything else.
Yeah.
So it would be easy enough to convert that to a PowerPoint. But I think people are just really wanting to see other people.
Right. That's what again, that's my instinct. That was my instinct coming in. And again, in my particular context, you know,
Yeah.
the value was different. So
Yeah, but I can see where certain aspects you could put more on there. I don't think I would go as far as the PowerPoint you showed. Like, I think for us that would probably be overkill. But I do think we put up the hymn words. So when Chris actually plays live, so whether it's at the organ or at his home on his keyboard, he plays live. So I let it go up and show a shot of him playing because so many people really engaged with that. And then I put up the words to the hymn, and you'll see lots of people singing at home on mute. So no one sings, we just hear his music. So it doesn't have to be a timing issue. And then we take that down and you see him wrap it up on his, like on the organ, you see him do the levers and such, and then it moves on.
Kristen, I'm going to maybe embarrass you a little bit.
Oh.
Y'all on the phone do not know how far this parish has come from the last time I heard about. So you have done amazing work. It sounds like that's incredible.
Thank you. We actually publish our 10 o'clock service to Facebook Live.
Oh, nice.
Because we have some people who don't have access except through Facebook. So for better or worse, that's what we've chosen to do. It's a little bit dicey to your point, but I sweat it out at the 10 o'clock service.
Right. That's what I say. I mean, there are no rules here, right? There really aren't. There's just learning and context and seeing as you go. The spotlight is a good discovery too. Because I would lose track. I tend to set it to speaker view, which all of you know means that, the person speaking is featured except for the preacher. I spotlight the preacher during their sermon every week, and then really write a note to myself every week to remember to take the spotlight off of them after. Right. That started in Vermont because I realized because Bishop Shannon was interrupted one time by someone who was watching and fumbled with their phone and it came off mute. And so that was what everyone suddenly was seeing. And that was when I discovered the joy of Spotlight.
Excellent.
And so
we have a lovely parishioner who's 93 who gets on through her Kindle. And on a Kindle, if you touch the screen, it unmutes you. So I spend all of the 10 o'clock service watching her and muting her, just going back and forth and muting her. So.
I have done a lot of these in a lot of dioceses, and that is the first time I've heard Kindles.
Yes, and God love her, her grandchildren come and set it up for her, and she loves it. And she's just so happy to be, on and seeing church.
That is
so. It's Phyllis Dickey. I don't know if you.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
93. She's tech savvy and on her way.
I love telling stories because if I get grumpy, 50-somethings, I'm like, listen.
I bet you can do it.
In their 90s who are onto this. So yeah, and then one of the other things that I just want to say is. And I did not come up with this, is I have a colleague who learned in the announcements to say that during that postlude time before coffee hour, that people should feel absolutely free. That's a time that people can leave if they're not comfortable going to coffee hour and not feel bad about it. If you do coffee hour, and I thought that was really brilliant. This is your time to exit and no one will even notice, and that's just fine. And we know a lot of people have to get on with their Sunday. We have also found, it's funny, in Arlington, because it was a much smaller community, we did, and also for the diocese, a more just open coffee hour where people could just share. St. Mark's here in Erie is a much bigger place. And so I've been doing these kind of hokey, kind of show and tell themes, but they're working really well. And they allow people a sort of structured way to check in with each other. And so that has been really good too. But the sort of Zoom tech piece of that is that ending Zoom worship can be weirdly awkward. Like, just to end the meeting and have the thing disappear, it can feel really abrupt. So again, some way, whether you end with a hymn and it fades to black and then you end, or again, you have that postlude that's going to lead into something else and you say, okay, this is your time that you can quietly leave. And then coffee hour, if you end the feed in coffee hour, it's not going to be as abrupt because that's more chaotic and chatty. And so you can just say, okay, you know, at that the whole bye everybody, and everyone has their hands up and you end, and it's not as abrupt. But again, I find as this like Zoom tech person, knowing like the decision of when to press the end meeting button is one of the like weirder, hard decisions. And it is a weirdly liturgical decision. Of whether it's the right time. And so those are some of the like workarounds and solutions I have found.
I kind of wait till there's only like 2 or 3 people left in coffee hour.
Right.
And everyone's going by over and over again.
Yep.
And I just sort of
that's a really good
then. Yeah.
For Vermont's diocesan services, when I was doing it, I would wait for Bishop Shannon to sign off.
Well, sometimes they're
good strategy.
Sometimes their rector leaves before other people.
Right.
I usually just say something when it gets down to whatever 9 or 10 or something. I just say, well, are we ready to get on with our day or something like that? And usually, you know, the people have started to go off. So they're like, yeah, okay.
I think one of the challenges is that
for some... Do we ever wave to people when we're in church?
Yeah.
Bye.
I think one of the challenges is some people don't know how to end the meeting on their end.
Right.
So from a technology standpoint, it's not that they want to be there, they just don't know how to get out of it.
You're right.
So when you end the meeting for them, they're like, phew, okay.
Yeah.
Off now.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I think, does anyone have any questions? I think, because I knew this was going to be a short program because it's just basically the end that we didn't get through in the first section.
We're going to experiment with a Christmas pageant.
Yay.
And so we were talking about spotlighting. So, and we're not going to record it because spotlighting affects recording, because I was reading that today, but we're going to try to spotlight each kid, and I'll have a script and try to follow along the script. But I feel like it's a little awkward because of the timing, because it takes a second to unspotlight somebody, another second to find the person you need to spotlight next and spotlight them.
Why are you needing to do the spotlight for it?
Well, of course, the other thing is to just unmute, have everybody muted except for the speaker.
Yeah, that's what.
And I can do the mute unmute bit.
And then
more quickly.
In speaker view, you'll actually get a pretty nice recording, I think.
We are going to. That's right. We are going to record it.
Yeah. Just a thought.
We did record some parishioners gave little stories. We had 4 for the 4 Sundays of pledging. And David, our rector, would introduce each one. And I had a tough time. I had my video off, but I had a tough time with getting a smooth transition from the rector to the parishioner that was speaking. There was always like this intermediate image of me, but not my picture, just my little avatar between us.
Huh.
Now you're thinking speaker view wouldn't necessarily do that.
No, I mean, I've done a ton now of recordings, like for all kinds of things where I've recorded in speaker view, and relied on people sort of like litanies and things like that go back and forth.
Sure.
And
okay, I'll try that. I'll propose that and see if it works.
Yeah, I'm excited for all these digital pageants.
Another suggestion that we've used is we have a photograph of one of the stained glass windows, and I use that as the Zion avatar instead of a person, a picture or whatever. It's the stained glass of the church. And that was before we were able to, Father Ian right now is broadcasting from in the church by himself. But before that, it was trying to get people some image from inside the building that somebody had.
That's another amazingly contextual thing that I think is so funny, because it's really church to church how much, like, again, one of my parishes here is in like a really ugly mid-century building. So that is like not a thing that we have to worry about.
Care.
Is in the cathedral. And so everything needs to be like, oh no, we need the stained glass and we need the, you know, so so I think that's another thing though, really, really to think about when you're designing Zoom worship is to have that in mind. Like, how much does the space play a role in what it is to be this worshiping community to these people? And it's going to be a different answer for different people. So
I have a question, Kathleen, that came up from watching the first program that you made.
Yeah.
We too had the issue of people either kind of wanting or not wanting us to go live to Facebook, in part because of the, what's the word? I'm tired tonight. Not wanting all the prayers to be heard, the private prayers to be heard. So how do you take that Zoom recording if you record the whole service? Like if you did want to give people a link to it later, how do you trim that record? How do you take pieces out of that recording?
Yeah, I mean, there are tons of video editing. I mean, I would just use video editing software. So I mean, I have a Mac, so I use iMovie most of the time, but there are also, like, for trimming, there are tons of like web-based programs that will do that. I even think, though I've never used it and I would have to look to see if I know what I'm talking about, which I might not, that Zoom in and of itself may let you trim the video, like if it's really just a matter of trimming sort of, but yeah, they're like one web-based one is called Veed, VEED. But yeah, so any sort of basic
I have iMovie.
iMovie is what I use every week.
You can take like pieces out of it and then put them back together.
Split, like basically it's like, so if you were going to take out the prayers of the people, you would, you split the clip, so and then you just delete that part, and it's really, and if you need any help with that offline, I'm happy to help you.
I don't know how to use the program well enough yet.
Yeah, you would get, I mean, you've been doing that other stuff with your music, you would get it in a second. It's really user friendly. So that's what again, if you wanted to be able to release the rest of the liturgy but didn't feel comfortable with a certain piece of it. Some people do that for music too. If they're, I mean, we don't worry too much about licensing in very small private Zoom.
Right.
But obviously, if we then want to take that recording and put it on Facebook or YouTube, then we might cut out a hymn.
Thanks. Helpful.
There's probably all kinds of copyright violations going on right now.
Yeah, we try to prevent that, because people do get in trouble, including churches, and we've had to clean up and help dioceses and churches pay for that mess, which is why we often are the bearers of bad news at Canonical Communications and saying you need that license, or you need to not use that hymn. Again, like, don't shout this from the rafters, but if you're on sort of, again, a private Zoom meeting, then that's a really different thing from being on Facebook or YouTube. So
okay,
I mean, again, if you have one license that covers a whole, for streaming, that covers a whole lot. But
I don't know if our David, our rector, does have to buy the music for each one. I don't know if that includes the rights to stream them.
Probably at this point he knows to do that, but you might check with him.
Okay. Well, we use YouTube as an intermediate step, although I downloaded from YouTube and actually play the videos right from my computer, as you suggested.
Right. Oh, are they YouTubes that were made by another user?
Yes,
Oh,
by
yeah.
us. By us.
By you. Oh, then fine.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, yeah. So that's a great solution to that. But yeah, the licensing stuff is not fun. I mean, fortunately,
I try not to think about it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting too, because there are a number of times that YouTube or Facebook has taken down material that I've posted that is fully licensed and paid for. And I've submitted, the proof that it's paid for, and then it eventually gets put back up. But yeah, it's thorny. Because they have these bots that automatically sort of listen and look for
interesting
copyright. But yeah, it's
interesting. We haven't run into, well, maybe we have. So good.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Yeah, anybody else? Well, feel free. I mean, again, it's so funny because I don't pretend to be in any way an expert at this. I think one of the greatest insights I have is only because I've done it in different places. So on a diocesan level, on a parish level, different, so that I think probably the biggest insight is that there are many, many different ways to do it, just like what we do in our church buildings. And it's really about figuring out what works for your folks. So also the ministry of the tech Zoom person is forevermore needs to be an official liturgical role.
Yeah.
We need to come up with a name. We need to bring it to general convention. It needs to be a thing. There needs to be a special pin you get. It's super important. Super important.
I was talking about it at Vestry, and I said it's either worship technician or digital deacon was what you had listed. And I thought, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's really, you literally can't do it without that person. Now, sometimes that person is playing another role, but we cannot right now have worship without a person who's able to do it. And that is something. So.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathleen.
All right. Well, have a good rest of your evenings. And I always say this, but I always love to get to spend a little bit of time in Vermont. Bye.
Excellent.
Here's our way.
It snowed yesterday.
Bye.